Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are immersing ourselves in a case that really shocked Spain and caught attention, well, all over the world. The 2013 murder of 12-year-old Asunta Basterra.
Mhm.
It's a painful, very complex story. It's defined by this image of, wealth and family success that was just shattered by this unbelievable betrayal. And then the judicial process that followed got completely tangled up in this, unprecedented media storm.
That's absolutely right. And our goal here in this deep dive, it's not about retrying the case or anything like that. It's really about carefully navigating the huge amount of source material surrounding the caso Asunta Basterra.
Right.
We're trying to sift through the actual judicial findings, the police timelines that were established, the parents' stories, which frankly fundamentally conflict with each other, and maybe most importantly, the staggering media distortions. These really severely influenced public opinion and, the court proceedings themselves. So we're looking for the established facts, the key contradictions, and those sort of enduring questions that still hang over this case, even years after the conviction.
And just before we even get into the family dynamic, there's this one single chilling medical fact that speaks to a level of, well, calculated planning that's just hard for anyone to really process.
Mm-hmm.
Asunta Youngfeng Basterra Porto, this highly gifted child, found dead near Santiago de Compostela just before she would have turned 13.
And the initial coroner's findings, they established the cause of death, was asphyxiation. But it was really the toxicology report that exposed the sustained effort behind this crime. Asunta had been given this massive lethal dose of lorazepam. We're talking at least 27 pills.
27?
Yeah. And to put that in context for you, that amount is roughly 9 times the maximum recommended high dose for an adult.
9 times. Wow.
That specific quantity tells us right away this wasn't some, spur-of-the-moment crime of passion or a sudden impulsive thing.
Yeah.
This murder, it required planning, getting hold of specific prescription meds, and then giving this sustained, incapacitating dose to make a 12-year-old completely helpless before the asphyxiation itself. It's really a defining feature of the case.
Okay, so let's set the scene a bit more. The Basterra Porto family background. Because this wasn't some quiet, private tragedy happening behind closed doors. Rosario Porto and Alfonso Basterra, they were extremely prominent figures in Santiago. Affluent, well-regarded professionals.
Indeed. Their public standing really provided this stark contrast to the crime itself. Rosario Porto, she came from this exceptionally prominent Galician family line. Her father was an honorary French consul. That's a significant social diplomatic role, which Rosario actually inherited in 1997.
Okay.
Her mother was a respected university lecturer, art history. Porto herself was a practicing lawyer, worked at her father's firm. Alfonso Basterra, he was originally a journalist from Bilbao, often specialized in economics. And they lived a life that reflected that status, a big, comfortable flat that Porto's parents had given her.
In Asunta, born Youngfeng in China, adopted at 9 months. Apparently, she was the first Chinese child adopted in Santiago at the time. And the sources describe her as just having immense promise, academically, artistically.
Yeah, by all accounts, she was exceptional, considered highly gifted, talented in ballet, violin, piano, and she'd even skipped a year in school.
Wow.
They really cultivated this image, the perfect, successful, cosmopolitan family. But beneath that surface, there were some pretty profound cracks starting to show.
And those cracks, strangely, were kind of preceded by this dark sequence of events, the sudden deaths of Asunta's maternal grandparents.
Yeah, this is a really disturbing detail. Her grandmother died in December 2011, and then her grandfather, the former consul he followed just 7 months later, July 2012. Both were certified as dying suddenly at home, natural causes.
2 quick deaths like that, 7 months apart, it naturally raises questions later on, especially in a murder investigation. Did the Civil Guard, that's the national police force in Spain, for our listeners, did they look into these deaths as potentially linked?
They did try. The Civil Guard attempted to investigate that avenue later, particularly because Rosario Porto then became the sole heir to this significant family estate.
Right.
But they hit a major roadblock. Both bodies had already been cremated. So a full forensic investigation was just impossible. The examining magistrate, that's the judicial figure in Spain who directs the initial investigation before trial, denied any further inquiries into those deaths. Just not enough physical evidence.
Okay, so they couldn't investigate the grandparents' cause of death directly, but the Civil Guard did make a ruling on the most obvious motive related to Asunta's murder, didn't they?
That's a really crucial clarification, yeah. The Civil Guard officially ruled out a direct economic motive, linking Asunta's murder to the grandparents' estate. While Rosario was the sole heir, the grandparents hadn't made any substantial lifetime donations directly to Asunta.
Ah, okay.
This meant Asunta wasn't an immediate universal heir in a way that would have triggered a direct financial benefit for the parents right when she
Yeah.
died. So the motive, it remained frustratingly unexplained.
And the public breakdown of the marriage itself started not long after that. Can you walk us through the separation timeline in early 2013?
Sure. The formal split kicked off in January 2013. Alfonso Basterra apparently discovered evidence of Rosario's infidelity, saw her emails. They had a pretty big argument, but they moved quickly to divorce by mutual consent just a month later, in February.
I stayed close.
Yeah, closely, almost, unnaturally entwined. Alfonso kept relying on Rosario for financial help, and he was really involved in Asunta's care. She was splitting her time between their two flats, which were literally just a stone's throw apart.
Hmm.
This close, kind of dependent relationship between ex-spouses, it's another unusual element in this whole picture.
Now, the most damning evidence, the thing that later established that aggravating factor of malice aforethought premeditation, were these precursor incidents suggesting Asunta was being systematically drugged months before she died.
This evidence was absolutely key to getting the murder conviction, rather than, say, manslaughter. The first really clear incident was July 2013. Asunta started showing signs of extreme drowsiness, dizziness at her music class. Alfonso, who was there with her, just brushed it off, said it was allergies, she needed antihistamines.
Seems like a simple explanation, maybe, until you look at what happened just a few weeks later.
Exactly. July 22nd, things escalated dramatically. Asunta's headmistress saw the girl in this semi-asleep state, really struggling to walk to do her tasks. When the headmistress kind of pushed her on it, Asunta revealed something deeply disturbing.
What was that?
She said her mother had given her the foul-tasting white powder that made her sleep for hours and hours.
Wow. That specific testimony, direct from Asunta, combined with the later toxicology from her hair analysis, which confirmed high levels of lorazepam precisely during that 3-month window, that must have been devastating for the parents' case.
Oh, it was the bedrock of the prosecution's argument for premeditation. The evidence confirmed this pattern of poisoning, establishing that the parents had this ongoing, planned effort to sedate her. It moved the potential charge squarely into murder territory.
So, if the drugging incidents were the warning signs, the next event, this alleged home invasion, feels like a huge, unexplained, maybe diversion tactic. The story of the man in black.
Yeah, this claim popped up right after that first drugging incident we mentioned, specifically the night of July 4th to 5th, 2013. Rosario Porto told the authorities that sometime between 2:30 a.m. and 4:30 a.m., this strong, short man wearing latex gloves got into Asunta's room and tried to strangle her.
The claim itself is just wild, but what makes it even stranger is Porto's reaction, or rather, her lack of reaction. An intruder tries to murder her child and she doesn't call the police.
Nope. She claims she just pushed him away and the man fled. Her failure to report a violent home invasion immediately is one of the most inexplicable parts of this. Investigators had a few interpretations, right?
Like what?
Was it a complete fabrication by Porto? Trying to set up a story about an external threat, maybe someone stalking them? Or was it maybe a first panicked attempt by the parents themselves, using sedatives or trying suffocation? Or maybe just an excuse to explain why Asunta might be found drowsy or hurt later on?
And the sources mention a neighbor's testimony that sort of undermines this whole story, too.
Yes. A neighbor testified their dogs, who were known for barking at strangers, never made a sound that night, which strongly suggests no one unauthorized actually got in. Plus, Asunta texted her best friend about the attack, but apparently got really distressed when telling another friend later.
Right.
And this friend's mother strongly urged Rosario to file a proper police report.
And Rosario went to the station but didn't file the report, then lied to the mother saying she had. That really points towards it being some kind of setup, a false narrative.
Precisely. It establishes this pattern of deception that really characterized everything leading up to September 21st, 2013, the day of the murder. So let's pivot to that day. The police reconstruction, it relies heavily on objective CCTV timestamps.
Okay. We know Asunta ate lunch at her father's flat. She was seen walking there around 2 p.m. Then, crucially, seen walking back to her mother's place at 5:21 p.m. Rosario followed about 7 minutes later. And the parents reported her missing at 10:17 p.m. that night.
Right. And when they reported her missing, Porto's initial story was quite simple. She claimed she'd left Asunta at home doing homework around 7 p.m., and she'd driven alone to the Teo country house, which is where the body was eventually found. That alibi basically disintegrated within hours.
Because the CCTV footage just blew it up immediately.
Correct. Surveillance footage surfaced right away showing Rosario, Porto, and Asunta together in the car, heading toward that Teo country house at 6:20 p.m. This objective camera evidence instantly destroyed her core alibi.
So she had to quickly pivot to story number two.
Her second story was an attempt to explain away that footage while still claiming innocence. She said, okay, Asunta did go with her briefly, but she quickly drove her back to Santiago, dropped her off to finish homework, and then Porto went back to Teo alone, supposedly making several stops on the way.
And this is where the police work really paid off. They didn't just take her word for it. They actually checked the roads Porto claimed she took for this quick return trip back to Santiago and then back to Teo again.
They did. Police meticulously examined surveillance from 33 different cameras along those supposed routes, and they found absolutely zero evidence of Porto's car making that return trip. No footage confirmed her journey back to Santiago.
Wow.
The clear implication, based on the physical evidence, is that Asunta never returned to Santiago that afternoon. She was taken directly to the Teo country house, the murder location.
And the moment that really cemented suspicion on Porto, the most pivotal moment, happened when she went with investigators to the Teo country house itself.
Yes, the attempt to destroy evidence. While investigators were processing the scene, Rosario Porto asked to use the bathroom. An officer, probably sensing something, decided to maintain constant surveillance and followed her upstairs. He found her trying to grab something out of a wastepaper bin in one of the bedrooms.
And that something was
A piece of orange twine.
the same type used to tie Asunta's body.
Exactly the same distinct type of orange twine used on Asunta's limbs when her body was found. Now, forensic analysis could definitively say if that specific piece came from the exact same roll used in the murder. But the timing and the action itself, trying to get rid of it during a formal police inspection, was profoundly incriminating. It basically confirmed to investigators that Porto was actively involved in hiding evidence at the crime scene.
Okay, so the physical evidence from the crime scene quickly focused on the sedative. Those toxicology results were just foundational for the prosecution's case against both parents, weren't they?
Absolutely paramount. The analysis of Asunta's hair, it confirmed sustained consumption of high doses of lorazepam for at least 3 months before she died. This backed up the headmistress's testimony from back in July.
Right.
The prosecution successfully argued, and the jury ultimately agreed, that Alfonso Basterra was the one responsible for getting and giving the toxic lethal dose at lunchtime on the day of the murder.
But this brings us to that central contradiction, the timing issue the defense lawyers really hammered on. Lorazepam, it's a fast-acting drug, right? It takes effect, within 45 minutes usually?
Typically, yes, after oral ingestion.
So if Asunta took this lethal dose at lunch with her father, say around 2 p.m. how on earth was she seen walking upright, oriented, and fast at 5:21 p.m. when she went back to her mother's flat, hours later?
This is a genuine scientific conflict in the case. The prosecution's toxicologists, they countered by saying that while a child would be profoundly drowsy, maybe dizzy, lorazepam specifically, it's a type of benzodiazepine, has less of an immediate muscle relaxant effect compared to some others. So they argued a high degree of sleepiness was possible without completely stopping her from walking a short distance. However, the defense fiercely maintained that a dose that large should have made her basically semi-comatose much earlier than 5:21 p.m. It severely challenged the prosecution's timeline of events.
And this case just had this major problem with evidence contamination and how that got reported, starting with that bizarre genetic profile, the whole semen man thing.
Oh, that was a colossal misdirection, although it did get resolved eventually. A genetic profile from semen was found on Asunta's t-shirt. Investigators traced it to this young Colombian man living in Madrid who'd actually been acquitted in a previous assault case. For a while, this threw huge uncertainty into the mix. Was there a third party involved?
So what was the real explanation for this DNA showing up?
It turned out to be a clear, documented case of laboratory contamination. The semen sample actually belonged to a condom used as evidence in a completely unrelated case involving that Colombian man, and it was found in the exact same cold storage room where Asunta's t-shirt was being analyzed.
Wow, so the evidence literally crossed paths in the forensics lab.
Precisely. And on top of that, the man had a completely airtight alibi. Verified Facebook photos, receipts, witnesses, all proving he was having dinner in Madrid when the murder happened, hundreds of kilometers away.
Right.
But even though the contamination evidence was overwhelming, the defense still grabbed onto this semen man profile, trying to constantly cast doubt and shift suspicion away from the parents.
Yet, maybe the most egregious violation, certainly of judicial integrity, wasn't forensic at all. It was the media just wholesale fabricating evidence.
This point really cannot be stressed enough. It caused lasting damage to the whole judicial process. Conversations between Porto and Basterra, while they were being held in pretrial detention, were recorded under the examining magistrate's instruction. But crucially, the Provincial Court of A Coruña later annulled those recordings. They ruled them illegal evidence, inadmissible, couldn't be used in the trial.
Right, illegally obtained, so out they go for court purposes. But that didn't stop the press, did it?
Not even slightly. The crisis really erupted when this major Spanish TV program, Espejo Público on Antena 3, broadcast a dramatic recreation of these illegal conversations back in October 2013, just weeks after the arrests, using actors. And here's a really profound violation. They added fictional, highly incriminating sentences that never, ever appeared in the official police transcripts.
Let's just repeat that dialogue, because it became so defining in the public mind.
Okay, so Rosario was depicted asking Alfonso, "You and your little games, have you had time to get rid of that?" And then Alfonso supposedly replied, "Shut up, maybe they're listening to us."
Those words, completely invented by the TV show, basically served to instantly confirm the public belief that the parents were guilty, that they were coordinating to get rid of evidence.
Exactly. That fabricated dialogue was immediately picked up and repeated, like endlessly, by nearly every single major Spanish media outlet, even state television. It acted as a definitive confession in the public eye years before the trial even started. It's possibly the most severe example of media interference and manufactured evidence in the entire case. Just incredible.
And then there was all the confusion around Alfonso Basterra's digital profile, which the media also sensationalized to demonize him even further.
Yeah, Alfonso's laptop and mobile phone, they mysteriously reappeared in his flat 3 months after the police had initially searched it. When the contents were finally examined, reports leaked out to the press saying he visited various pornographic websites, including some with, quote, "a high proportion of pornographic videos and images showing women with Asian features."
And the press immediately weaponized that, confusing it with another piece of evidence entirely.
They did. Media reports often just blurred this information together with the discovery of some intimate photos of Asunta that were found on her mother's older phone. The general public quickly jumped to the conclusion that Basterra was a pedophile, or maybe both parents were involved in some kind of perverse behavior. It was incredibly inflammatory.
But the official source material does clarify the distinction, right?
It does. The official report confirmed Basterra visited a wide range of erotic websites, not just ones focused on Asian content. And more importantly, Porto's lawyer later stated that the photos of Asunta found on her mother's phone were just normal and irrelevant, typical pictures a parent would take.
Right.
But by the time that clarification came out, the damage from the leaks was already done. It had created this hostile atmosphere and definitely influenced the potential jury pool.
So despite all this messy evidence, the extreme media contamination, the unresolved motives, the trial did eventually go ahead. And the jury came back with a unanimous verdict. Guilty, both Rosario Porto and Alfonso Basterra guilty of aggravated murder.
Yes. The jury concluded that the parents, acting together, repeatedly gave lorazepam to their daughter over several months. This culminated in giving her the lethal dose at lunch on September 21st, before they asphyxiated her at the Teo Country House. They estimated the time of death between 6:33 p.m. and 8 p.m.
And to reach that verdict, the jury had to rely really heavily on one specific piece of testimony, right? The one that placed Alfonso Basterra away from his home, essentially destroying his alibi that he was just home reading all afternoon.
That was the testimony of a young woman named Clara Baltar, a former classmate of Asunta's. She testified she saw Asunta walking normally with her father, Alfonso Basterra, near a sports shop on General Pardinha Street in Santiago, and she placed the sighting around 6:23 p.m. on the day of the murder.
Okay, and the prosecution really used that testimony powerfully. It suggested Alfonso had lied about where he was, implying guilt, and it also gave them a timeline that kind of countered the defense argument that Asunta should have been incapacitated by the drugs much earlier.
Right. The jury chose to give this witness testimony absolute credibility. They accepted that Alfonso had deliberately lied about his movements. But here is where the whole conviction gets chronologically really complicated, because the defense lawyers later identified this fatal, very precise conflict in the timestamps that just challenged the physical possibility of that sighting.
Okay, let's break down this 4-minute impossibility for the listener. We need to look at the objective camera timestamps again.
Okay, let's unpack this carefully. First, you've got the movement of Rosario Porto and Asunta in the car, leaving Santiago, heading for Teo. The camera at the Galarisa petrol station recorded Rosario and Asunta in that car at 6:21.24 p.m. and this timing was verified by investigators.
Okay, so 6:21 p.m., Asunta is definitely in the car, moving away from Santiago towards the place she was killed.
Correct. Now let's look at the witness's location. The classmate claimed she saw Asunta and Alfonso walking on General Pardinha Street. Surveillance footage from a nearby Sabadell bank camera recorded the classmate herself at 6:24.54 p.m. This means her sighting of Asunta and Alfonso must have happened just moments before that, maybe exactly at the 6:23 p.m. she recalled.
Wait a minute, so that's a time difference of only about 3.5 minutes.
Exactly. At 6:21 p.m., Asunta is documented in a car hundreds of meters away, speeding out of the city towards Teo. At 6:23 p.m., the witness claims she saw Asunta walking normally with her father back in the city center. It's physically impossible for Asunta to have gotten out of that moving car, walked back hundreds of meters into the city center, and been seen walking with her father all within roughly 4 minutes, especially considering the distance, the traffic.
Yeah, the maths just don't add up. Space and time don't allow for her to be in the car at 6:21 and walking with her dad blocks away just a couple of minutes later.
It's a profound chronological hole in the narrative. The defense lawyers hammered this impossibility, arguing strongly that the classmate was either mistaken about the date she saw them or mistaken about who she actually saw.
So how did the jury deal with this massive contradiction in their findings? How did they reconcile it?
This is the really pivotal decision that draws a lot of judicial scrutiny. The jury basically chose to dismiss the objective, time-stamped video evidence. In their formal findings, they just claimed the Galerace petrol station camera was out of time due to a lack of synchronization.
They just invented a reason to disbelieve the camera to make the witness testimony fit.
That's certainly the interpretation favored by the defense and many legal analysts. Both the investigating police officers and the defense lawyers insisted that the timing of those crucial car cameras had been verified and were accurate during the reconstruction. Even the examining magistrate himself had apparently assured Porto that the police had the events timed. So the jury's decision to override this verified evidence remains highly contentious.
And this inconsistency, this led to a major judicial correction later on, didn't it?
It did. When the case went up for review by the High Court of Justice of Galicia in March 2016, they upheld the overall conviction and the sentences, but they added this crucial kind of mitigating nuance. The court explicitly found that it was not proven that Alfonso Basterra physically got into the car or was actually present at the murder scene in Teo.
So the High Court essentially believed only Rosario Porto carried out the physical act of asphyxiation at the country house.
That was their conclusion regarding the physical act itself, yes. However, and this is key, the court still upheld Alfonso's full 18-year sentence for murder.
How did they justify that?
Their reasoning was based on this concept of co-authorship through necessary intervention. They argued that Alfonso was equally guilty because he was essential to the planning, and he executed critical acts specifically, getting and giving the toxic dose. They stated definitively that the macabre outcome could not have been carried out without his intervention, so even if he wasn't physically at the crime scene, he enabled it.
The sheer intensity of the media coverage really feels like the ghost haunting this entire process. It seems impossible to talk about the aftermath without acknowledging just how profound the effects of that media contamination were.
Absolutely. Rosario Porto's lawyer, Jose Luis Gutierrez Aranguren, he was relentless about this. He kept asserting that the jury was just irreparably contaminated by the media. He often pointed to specific, definitive headlines that were published long before the trial even started. For instance, he highlighted a headline from November 2013 that's 2 full years before the verdict that stated, as if it were fact, Rosario Porto killed Asunta in Teo, and she alone disposed of the body.
Yeah, that kind of reporting, years in advance, it basically acts as a pre-conviction in the public mind.
It really does. It made selecting a jury incredibly difficult. The trial itself actually had to be postponed multiple times because so many potential jurors were challenged or excused themselves. It just signaled how hard it was to find 12 impartial citizens in a case that had totally saturated the national consciousness.
Ultimately, both parents got that 18-year sentence for aggravated murder. What happened to their relationship after they were sentenced? Did they interact at all?
Well, despite being incarcerated in the same prison system for a period, the sources confirmed they never met again, except when they had to appear in court. They maintained absolutely zero relationship after the sentencing. Porto apparently once said publicly she refused to see her ex-husband, even in a painting.
And Rosario Porto's own story came to a very tragic end while she was serving her sentence. It seems she struggled immensely with being imprisoned.
She did, very much so. Porto made multiple documented suicide attempts. one in 2017 after hearing about an impending prison transfer, and again in 2018 when she tried to hang herself in the showers but was saved by another inmate. She was frequently classified as high risk and put under anti-suicide protocol 6 different times during her incarceration.
Then in March 2020, she was transferred to Brivo Women's Prison in Avila, a move she strongly resisted. And she took her own life there just 8 months later, November 2020. Hanged herself from a window using a belt made from a bedsheet.
And even with the conviction secured, the sentence is upheld, and this tragic end for one of the parents, the fundamental ambiguity of the case just persists. The investigation ultimately failed to ever clarify a definitive, proven motive for why they would murder their daughter.
Right. We have the ruled out economic motive regarding the grandparents, and then just endless speculation about maybe what Asunta might have known, but nothing concrete beyond that legal term malice aforethought, a simple desire to kill. This huge gap, this lack of a clear why, is perhaps why the case has transitioned so powerfully into the true crime media landscape.
Exactly. The media coverage itself, despite all the intense ethical criticism it rightly received from journalistic associations about its treatment of minors, its fabrication of evidence, it proved completely irresistible for popular culture. The case has been turned into various documentaries, books, and most recently that very popular 2024 Netflix miniseries, The Asunta Case.
And the way it's depicted culturally kind of reflects that persistent uncertainty, doesn't it? The series, which obviously took some creative license, presented multiple conflicting theories. One where Rosario acted totally alone, another where both parents acted together because Asunta maybe knew some critical secret that could ruin their lives. That ambiguity, despite the finality of the court's decision, is clearly what keeps capturing the public's imagination. So the Asunta Basterra case really forces us to look hard at a situation where you had this meticulous, detailed judicial process that was just fundamentally compromised by media sensationalism. And it was plagued by these deep inconsistencies, especially in the central timeline, that 4-minute window we talked about, that contradicted the father's alibi but was still used to convict him.
It really raises these profound questions about the ability of any legal system to deliver truly pure justice when it's facing such an overwhelming pre-existing wave of public condemnation. Given the confirmed errors in crucial evidence, that forensic contamination with the Semen Man profile, the illegal and fabricated prison recordings, and then the High Court itself correcting the record to say the father wasn't actually proven to be at the murder scene, does a unanimous conviction of 2 affluent parents really represent justice based purely on provable facts? Or does it, at least in part, reflect this almost irresistible pressure to satisfy the public's intense desire for a definitive conclusion, a neat ending? That's a question that, regardless of the verdict, still resonates very profoundly, I think, in the courts of Galicia and well beyond.